Welcome. Tonight is the beginning of our third day. Also going to be our last full day. After today, we have a half day.
No.
Yes.
There's Saturday tomorrow. And we have
Today's
the beginning of the
This is the beginning of the last full day.
Tomorrow night will be.
And tomorrow night, the half day begins.
Oh, I see. You're starting.
Because the retreat began in the evening. So we have our own time. The day begins at 7 o'clock.
Tomorrow is a full day.
Completely up.
Yeah. So anyway, those weighty matters aside.
You're making that up as you go.
Just like the Hebrew calendar.
Exactly. No one can figure it out.
So that means this wasn't actually a full 4-day retreat.
No,
Three and three.
That's correct. That's correct. Take it up with management. I want my money back. But you were paying by night, and it was a 4-night retreat. You got to read the fine print. Okay, anyway, welcome. This is the Yoga of Radiant Presence. As I'm sure you all have had your noses rubbed in very thoroughly by now. I'd like to talk about one thing to start off our evening tonight. This is not about me. It's not about me sitting up here talking. It's not about orienting to me or anything. It's about you discovering, noticing, availing yourself of the fact that your experience is a treasure trove that is available to you to dip into any time. And so during this 4-day period, hopefully you have been playing with that, exploring that, availing yourself of it, and learning how to do it, so to speak. You know, finding tricks, finding ways or modes or flavors of tuning into this richness that is always available because it's what you are intrinsically. It's what being is. Which I call radiant presence and so on and so forth. But it's just simply the actuality of your experience. Your experience is real and is vastly more than is sayable and is always available because it never goes away. You can't make it go away. You can't shut it off. It doesn't even have a dimmer. So, during the course of the next day, just sort of, play with the notion. This is about empowering you to tune in for yourself to your experience. All I've been doing whatsoever is attempting to steer you back to noticing the actuality of your own experience. I'm not doing anything. I'm not supplying anything that isn't there. I'm not supplying something that is not there, and all of a sudden it is because I'm putting it there. I'm simply trying to point out the availability of this astounding transcendental actuality that you happen to be. And since that is the case, you can avail yourself of that, you can take advantage of that, you can play with that and explore it and hopefully get it out of it for yourself. So anyway, what's going on with everybody? Or more specifically, what's going on with you? What's going on with everybody is their problem.
So when you say play with that, explore that, it's not
congeal together to appear to be we that can actually play with it.
Well, you're constructing an edifice, you're constructing a limitation that's not necessary. Why suppose that you can't play with it? Why suppose that you can't do it? Anything? We don't know how anything works, so why suppose that, oh no, that won't work? Maybe it will. You are a transcendental being, so you can exercise miraculous power and miraculous functionality. In fact, you do every instant. So there's no reason to suppose that you can't do so in this context that we're talking about. So just because logically you can't possibly do anything about this, because you don't exist and you have no free will and blah, 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 don't let that stop you from having at it. It's a hell of logic, right? Don't use logic to paint yourself into a corner. Don't use logic to cut yourself down. You know, if you're going to spin doctor, be like the politicians, do it for your benefit. Do it to line your own pocket.
Conventionally, it seems that problems and karma and all that have momentum. You're saying
Have what? Sorry?
conventionally, it seems, all apparent observation that problems and karma and had a problem for a while, but it waits. It waits for.
Right.
I just wanted to comment a little bit more.
Doesn't really, if you look closely, it seems to be the case like that. If you may show up and then will disappear and then will show up. I mean, every time you go to sleep, all your problems disappear. So right away, there's this cycle of appearance, disappearance that on a roughly 24-hour cycle or whatever it is, 12-hour, I don't know what. So superficially, that's changed a bit. They may seem to be more or less urgent. They may seem to have new added factors. Your attitude towards them may have shifted subtly. So everything is constantly. You can say, "Oh gosh, it's kind of the same," but kind of the same is a euphemism for completely different. So, yeah, sure, the similar patterns can seem to be showing up, but again, similar is a way of saying not the same, right? So, and this is not, the point of this is not to duck your problems. The point of this is not to become a deadbeat. The point of this is to discover that your actuality is rich and open-ended and has all sorts of resources to draw on that you can actually apply to your situations, or may seem to be able to, as well as having all sorts of other avenues of experiential participation open to you that you may not even be used to classifying as being there. Everything appears uniquely in the instant and never repeats. Never repeats. It may, similar iterations of it may seem to show up, and you may say, oh, this looks like almost the same thing. But again, almost the same is a way of saying completely different. We stack the deck against us. We use almost the same as an argument for the same. We spin it to the same, which makes it seem more stuck. Why not, again, do like the politicians do and spin it in your favor? Almost the same is actually different, as opposed to almost the same averages out to the same. Why not average it the other way? 50 cents, you can average it to $1, but you can average it to nothing. So why not do it to your advantage? Speaking of which, Dan has a piece of paper.
I already gave it away to the other group.
Sorry, little comedy. Yes.
The thought that keeps going through since I've been here is, Aldous Huxley's book Island, and they had their spiritual book was called What's What and What to Do with What's What. And it seems like this radiant presence, this noticing, is dealing with what's what, but not what to do with what's what.
Right, that's true. Because what's what does itself. What's what automatically supplies the what to do with it because it's already doing it. In other words, everything that's happening is doing itself. It's already happening. The present moment is already fully here. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to make it here. You don't need to put it here. It's already here. Everything's here completely. In the next instant, it's already here too. And look, well, it's still here.
Here's another one.
And you didn't have to do anything. And all the entire chain of events is exactly like that. It's already happened. It's already doing itself. And noticing that fact, you notice that A, you're off the hook, and B, what's happening here is a lot stranger than you may be used to thinking. Both of which,
Just let go of the reins 100%.
not necessarily. You notice there are no reins, and holding on to what you used to consider holding on to the reins is still there, but it's not actually that. It's just more of this. That also is being done. So your participation, your active participation in your life is being done, which is an interesting state of affairs. You aren't doing yourself, you're being done. You don't decide to be who you are. Reality is putting you here in real time, making you up as long as you are.
It doesn't satisfy. It just feels like there's something here that is making choices. And,
Sure.
And
Yeah, okay, there is, but you look very closely at how choices happen. So when you make a choice, exactly why do you choose what you choose? The person next to you might choose something different in that instance. Why would they choose what they choose, and why do you choose what you choose?
you don't have to know why. You have the sense that whatever this I thing is creatively influencing my experience.
Sure, but you can participate in that. You've been able to participate with it that way. There's no reason you can't continue.
Well, then that brings up that there's choices, and then that
Okay.
brings up what to do with what's what.
Okay, good. Then all of a sudden you have a whole new game to play. You have well, great. What am I going to do with this? So yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem because it's not. You can approach it in those terms, and there's nothing to keeping you from doing it.
Yeah.
This is not about taking away any functionality. It's about discovering that there's just whole universes and dimensions of more phenomena and participation that we are actually already also engaged in. It's not about negating what is happening. It's about discovering that what is happening, what we're aware of what is happening, is taking place in a vast context of all sorts of other things that are happening that are also right here, right now, that are you too. So it's an increase, not a decrease.
And it's boundaryless.
Exactly. So you're free to participate with it in those terms, to the extent you can make that happen. Or you're free to play with alternatives to that if you're interested in exploring that. You can explore choicelessness. You can explore choice. And, that's all good. It's all good. because what's really happening is beyond choice or choiceless. It's just completely beyond that. It's just so far beyond that, it's just... So it's perfectly viable to see it in these various ways. But it itself is more than that. I mean, really, this noticing increases your options. It increases your, what's on the table in terms of what you can do, how you can approach it, where you can approach it, ways you can do it. You want to be a purposeful participator, by all means do so. You want to be a magician and do wild, improbable magic, by all means do so. You want to, be transcendental and be nothing but, ethereal, non-existent light, do so. All modes are possible because what's happening here is stranger than any of it, and yet can be seen or interfaced with in all of these various ways.
But it does require some comfort in not having anything to hold on.
Sure. Yeah, but that turns out to be not just a comfort, but a real advantage. But there can be an acclimatization. Typically we're used to holding on to our worldview, to our sort of sense of limitations, and we find it comforting. And it can certainly be threatening, or at least destabilizing, to explore the possibility that may not actually be quite that way, and whoops, what's up with that? But you may find that it's actually advantageous once you go through the adventure of being with this destabilization, being with this, whoops, wait a minute, what's going on here? Have I bitten off more than I can chew? Wish I'd taken the red pill. Or is it the blue pill?
I can't remember either.
The blue pill is the one that makes you go back.
Oh, who can remember these things?
Take them all at the same time.
Actually, along those lines, I don't know if you guys got, you probably didn't. I gave out a handout on the first night. You probably didn't get that. Let me give you that. That has yep. That has a quote supposedly from Jesus on the top of it, which is very relevant to what you just brought up. From the Gospel of Thomas. Give you my cold at the same time. Just a portion of it that is relevant to what we were just talking about. Oh, I hear you. Well, in that case, I'll read it to you.
Good.
This quote says, "Seek until you find. When you find, you will be troubled. Then you will marvel and rule over the all." So, seek until you find is all very well and good, but there's a backlash. It has repercussions. Once you find, there's a significant whoa factor. Wait a minute. Hold the phone. This is pretty weird. You know, this is a big bite to bite into. And, you know, this is an aspect of this. This is not without a certain amount of risk, at least apparently, not without a certain amount of, it demands a certain amount of being willing to take a chance, because this kind of investigation demands is predicated upon your being willing to step outside of your normalcy to some extent, to step outside of your normal frame of reference and explore the possibilities of looking around in that context. And you may find something that clashes with, or is contrary to, or significantly alternative to your usual way of looking at things, and that can cause a dissonance. That can cause whoa, wait a minute, what's up with this? What do I do with this? And so that is an issue. That's an issue. So if that's too much of an issue for you, then you can, okay, this isn't for me, But on the other hand, if you have a curiosity or a significant spirit of inquiry, investigation, you can check it out and play with it and trust that maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe, in fact, it'll turn out to be pretty good in the long run, even though initially there's a kind of a, wait a minute, what's going on here aspect to it.
Continuing on about that quote, it feels like it's been like troubled and then not, yeah. I liked hearing the first, like I never can't do this or what, can't do anything in your response, but it's almost like,
thanks for nothing.
yeah, something.
Good news, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You don't have to go any further.
Yeah, like what now?
You're right. You're right. You're totally limited, and you can't go any further. What a load off. Whew, that was close.
It doesn't feel like that. In terms of like, but it feels like nothing is moving here. Like.
Sure. Well, the finding and the troubled portion can obviously form a little recursive loop until you move through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like back to the finding.
Sure. And the challenge in this yoga is not finding reality. The challenge in this yoga is letting go of unreality. So this being troubled part is the issue, is the whole point. It's relatively easy to see reality. It's relatively easy to see outside your normal frame of reference, but it's very hard to let go of that normal frame of reference. People find this comfortable. That's why they have it in the first place. It feels like home. It feels like normalcy. It feels like safety. It feels like me. And most people don't want to leave that. Joe McKenna said something wonderful, which is that mankind's very worst punishments are inflicted upon those who force people out of their worldviews, and those such people are labeled heretics, and they're often nailed to crosses and burned at stakes and things like that. So this very strong motivation to cling to one's normalcy is quite normal and quite, most people, that's their mode, and it's fine for it to be their mode. For those of us that find ourselves flirting with or exploring alternatives, then these issues come up. And then all of a sudden this becomes relevant in terms of, well, do I want to take the blue pill or the red pill after all? And this is for you to explore in your own process. You don't have to go anywhere. You're here because you want to be.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
Yeah. And what you
I
make.
like marveling a lot better than being stuck on the edge of trouble.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. But what you make of this whole process as it proceeds and as it morphs into different modes will be what you make of it, and it's up to you to be with it, deal with it how you're inclined.
Peter, you talk with us often about being a long and winding road as well. That it's not a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
This is a path of unfoldment, and that it takes what it takes
Mm-hmm.
for people to see beyond their
Sure.
limited worldviews.
Yeah, sure.
That it's that's been sort of a source of relief for me,
Mm-hmm.
really, to have that experience.
Sure. Yeah, it's not necessarily simple.
Yeah.
But it never has been, so.
But just the reassurance that, in fact, we have been on the right track, even though we were not sure we were.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe you're on the right track.
We're on some
Caveat
track,
emptor.
some track, yeah.
Hopefully you're on the right track.
There is only one track.
This whole thing, this whole very strange thing that we're playing with here is interesting because it's completely structureless. It's not anything. It's not nothing. It's not even a process. It's not a recipe. It's not a map. It's weirder than that. And so figuring out how to be with it is the process of being with it. It's not like, oh, I see what to do, and then you just do it. That would be easy. Here's the recipe. Follow the recipe, and it's not like that, is it? The process is to discover the recipe. And so it's tenuous, it's interesting, it's exploratory, it's experimental. It demands inquiry, it demands investigation, it demands a scientific mindset of curiosity. What's going on here? What is this? Where am I? How do I do this? And experimenting and screwing around and trial and error and all these kinds of things. And that is the very nature of this yoga. The yoga is the struggle of finding out what the yoga is. It actually is. That's what it is. So this is, it's tenuous, it's risky, it's what am I doing here? What's happening here? It's like, well, there's no answer to that question. And asking that question and finding your own answer is what this process is. But there is a basis, and the basis is that your experience is actual, and that it may well be different, even very, very different than you're used to thinking it is. And so that's a starting point that is very real, it is very actual, you can actually address immediately. But once you address it, you don't know what's going to happen. At that point, it's, well, what do I do now? And it's an exploration into the unknown. But life is an exploration into the unknown, always has been, always will be. So this is not really anything new.
So one of the things I'm finding is I really was relieved to be eating and not talking, or just in general not talking too much except to my roommate. And then, I don't know where I'm going with this, except to say that I this afternoon I've been engaging. Okay, what is that? Every single word out of my mouth was shit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Welcome to the club.
Well.
Gold star.
Yeah. But no. So but it's a little disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, well, wait a minute, if every single word out of my mouth is shit, but I know how to be, and I know I've got somewhat decent social skills. Well, social skills, this is not the place for social skills.
You noticed. Thank God. Or I'd be out of a job. Not that I have a job, mind you.
I'm feeling much better already, but it doesn't. I mean, and so it's not the place for social skills, and everything out of my mouth is shit, and so, and I'm out of the state of marvel and wonder. I don't have to stay in the state of marvel and wonder. That's just a blip, blip, blip. So there's no marvel and wonder. There's no connection with other human beings. There's no. I know this. It sounds melodramatic, but I'm just sort of sharing what the afternoon has been, and evening has been like. You want us to share,
Sure.
And it's an interesting thing, bringing up this whole idea of the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's not trouble right now because people think it's funny, so I'm sure there's humor in it somewhere.
Hopefully.
It's great.
You gotta laugh to keep from crying, right?
What? Yeah.
But being with our experience honestly, we notice that it's precarious. We notice that God, what am I saying here? What am I doing? Is this, I'm faking it. And it's just a matter of getting real. It's just a matter of being honest. It's a little more precarious than our usual sort of, I know what to do. I know what my role is here, and it's doing it, and I'm doing it great. It's like, yeah, right. So. And that's a very fresh engagement, to be with the actual uncertainty of what am I doing and how am I doing it? There's no way to answer that question. You can't know if you're doing anything right or even well, or even successfully, or any of that. I mean, it's all just, throwing stones into the Grand Canyon. It's like, what? There's no answer, there's no verification. And this is our actual condition, so this is just a matter of being honest, being real with, who am I? What am I doing? I don't know. And I never have. And sometimes I've been able to not notice that I'm faking it and have a certain degree of confidence that I'm actually functioning pretty well. But that's bullshit. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how well I'm doing it. Am I sane? Am I crazy? Have I ever known? Does anyone ever know? I mean, this is just a matter of acknowledging the actuality of the precariousness of being a human being, you know. And it's comfortable to gloss over that, to just sort of be one of the herd, and you know what to do because it's what everyone does, and you're kind of doing your version of it, and no one's calling you on it. So everyone's saying, "I'm okay," and you're okay, and you're saying, "I'm okay," and you're okay. You know, but the real situation isn't really like that. The real situation is, I don't know if I'm okay. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know if you're okay. I have no idea what you're doing. You don't have any idea what you're doing. We're all just making this up as we go along, and kind of doing a monkey see, monkey do thing, and hope that it's going to be adequate, right?
Sounding worse.
So that's just a matter of being real, and being real is productive. Being real is being engaged.
Well, it emphasizes, it really emphasizes what you said the first night. I mean, we know this, but we are alone.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Which we know.
Sure.
But it emphasizes the aloneness in a way that some of us who have certain facility don't necessarily ever have to face in quite this way, because it's not about being alone from other people.
Right.
I mean, I'm completely alone from whatever this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're one off. You're it. There's no frame of reference to what you are, because there's nothing like you. It never has been and never will be. And you alone know that, because you alone are that. And where you are, no one else is.
And the more this morphs, then whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. Just
It's all good. We're always in incoherence. We're always in incompleteness. We're always, acting in partial ways that don't ever get quite resolved, and that lead to more partial ways that don't ever get quite resolved. And right?
For myself, I find that I can't speak anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be able to have a dance, when I was very gay, and now I have nothing to say.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's as if a structure has just gone.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm kind of like that when it gets to small talk. Talking about this stuff, I can just spew bullshit all day. But, if I'm sitting in a social situation, I'm sitting there. And people ignore me, just think I'm this weird old curmudgeon. Which I am, so it works. It's the shoe fits, right? So, no, I understand you, I can talk about what I'm interested in, and I'm interested in very few things.
Yes.
So I'm not a social butterfly.
Yes.
And so be it.
And yet you do socialize, and yet we all do socialize regardless. It's just energy moving about.
Yeah, something happens.
You don't have to define it.
The water finds its way downhill.
It's not about how it looks.
Thank God.
Yes.
It looks grim.
It looks grim, right.
The high point of the retreat.
I was just thinking that. This is it?
This is it.
Wow!
This is it.
This is that.
I'd like to have a
This is the pie in the face. The pie in the face section of the retreat. This is
Right
the,
now.
this is the, by the way, guess what? Of course
This is the only part of the retreat that exists.
Yes.
I have a question for experience. What?
Functionality, structurality, coherence of dynamism. There's inconceivable structure present, which is evidence of what? There's inconceivable functionality present, which is evidence of what? What was the third thing I said? Dynamism. There's inconceivable dynamism present, which has amazing degrees of coherence. I mean, we draw our theories of cause and effect based on the fact that the dynamism, the motion, the change that we experience in phenomena has an incredible degree of patterning to it. It's not just random sort of flashes that are connected to each other. I pick up this glass and I throw it across the room, and it actually seems to travel in an arc as it spills water all over everybody. Right? And so that's coherent. It's not like I pick it up and I throw it and it disappears and then appears on Mars and then disappears entirely and never appears and then appears. I mean, you see what I mean? In other words, there's a kind of a seeming connectedness of subsequent versions of dynamism that is evidence of what? And this is what I call the intelligence. This cross-connection of phenomena in terms of structure and dynamism and functionality, which are all just three ways of saying the same thing.
So following that up is a way of, it's pointing towards something.
Exactly. And this is a question, it's like just a jumping off point to explore experientially directly what it is pointing towards. Just like, well, being, I am here, being is here is not the end point. It's a jumping off point into experiential engagement with what that is referring to, which of course is more than just the reference. And likewise, all of this structurality, the laws of physics, just all this incredible structurality and functionality is pointing at what? What's doing all that? It's not just random chaos in any simple sense, right? It's not just snow on the TV screen, right? It's all this incredible structure and patterning.
It's almost like finding God via the design theory.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. This incredible depth and scale of design is evidence of just an inconceivable potency, which is what I refer to as the inherent intelligence.
There's a subjective thing that often happens with many lecturers, everybody knows. When they take a book, a spiritual book or something, very recondite aphorisms or something, it means absolutely nothing to me at first.
Right.
And I read it the next day and it still means nothing. And I don't do any research or background checks. And at some point something flashes. Is that
Sure.
intelligence? I mean,
Yeah, because the structurality and functionality of language and symbol systems, coupled with perception and intuition and all that, is more aspects of this meaningful dynamism, this coherent dynamism. In other words, words aren't just random letters sprinkled around. They actually somehow convey something. How does that happen?
They have a structure of intelligence.
Yes, exactly. They somehow embody and convey intelligence. And wow, so what is that? So what's going on there? And again, that's a jumping off point into experiential engagement with whatever that is, which is an actuality, which is very vaguely indicated by inherent intelligence and these other labelings.
That was a really good question, and I would like to understand your answer a little bit.
Okay, sure.
So he asked about access points
Yeah, access points to what I call the inherent intelligence, and he access points to what I call radiant presence. He talked about his getting, which is that experience is present, and that it unstoppably shines forth. It continually shines forth, and it's doing itself. I mean, this is an objective reality, or as objective as we can find anyway. Right? And so that is something you can actually access. You know, you can actually feel that. You can, like the meditation this morning was all about, you know, just be with this, feel this. What is this that is here? What is this that you're feeling? And noticing that it is actual, and it's subtle, it's weird, it's not necessarily simple, it's not necessarily what we think it is. So that's a way of access to this, what I call radiance, and so on. So then there's another principle we talked about, which I call the inherent intelligence, which is this inconceivable, amazing meaningfulness and functionality and structurality that is in this radiant presence. In other words, the radiant presence isn't just like, you know, like a sparkler burning. It's intensely patterned and meaningful and eventful and seeming to do all sorts of things, and looks like planets and galaxies and life forms and communication and life and death, and I mean all this amazing event. And what's up with that? How does that happen? So this is all of this functionality is evidence of some potency, some energy, some intelligence that I call it, or whatever. And so the question is, well, how do you engage with that directly, and not just conceptually, not just think about it, you know, as a philosophy or something, but really sort of feel your way into it. And so I had suggested to look at this amazing structurality, look at the way the structurality changes over time, you know, the way things move, the way things morph, the way things develop, look at cause and effect, you know, look at meaningfulness, look at all these kinds of things. And then, again, not just think about it, because that's just philosophizing, but sort of feel what that is intuitively or experientially, and see what you know, sort of see what you can find there, see what you can touch in terms of this potency that all of this amazing structurality is evidence of. Did that make a little more sense, or adequate anyway? Makes sense is maybe dignifying it too much.
Peter, it's really fun to play with that for me, because like, as you brought that up, I've been exploring it for a long time. Like this morning, I opened my eyes and looked at the carpet, and it did take on this thing that was amazing, for, you know, in the same way that the sunset was tonight.
Yeah.
And I've been playing with like the marvel of the marvel, letting it reveal to me that it's I'm not differentiating the marvel.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun to look at.
Yeah, great.
The subtleties that are just right there.
Yes. That's excellent. That's very good yoga, because it's easy to see it where you see it, and the trick is to see it where you don't see it, because it's there too, because there's nothing but. And that's the progression of this yoga, is the discovery that it just is across the board. There's nowhere that it isn't. It's all radiance. It's all divine intelligence. It's all inconceivable. You know, the mundane, the stupid, the boring, the disgusting, as well as the amazing and the beautiful and the inconceivable, are all this one astounding whatever. Right?
It's really trippy to see the amazing as just that too. That's the part that's been really kind of elusive for me.
Yeah, good, yeah. Nothing is just anything. Nothing is simple. Everything is more than that. And you can go there. You can be with that. You can be with anything in a new way, in a more way, and you'll find a more there. You know, and it's just amazing, and endlessly more. You know, there's dimensions and dimensions and dimensions of more anywhere you look. and that is very interesting. That's an interesting state of affairs. Mm-hmm.
More popular than the seed.
More what?
More popular, let's say,
Uh-huh.
in the world. What is it about that is more comfortable?
I don't think it's more comfortable. I think it's just a dominant mode at a certain in the ecology of this reality. It's like asking, why are there more leaves than there are flowers in a forest? Who knows? But it's the nature of that ecology that should be so. In a way, this kind of engagement, this kind of moving into a more profound participation with what this actually is a relatively rare event, numerically speaking, in terms of individuals. But then flowers are a relatively rare event compared to leaves in the vegetable kingdom, for example. Why? Well, it's just how plants work. Maybe this is just how humans work. So numerically, it's not the dominant mode to be engaged in this kind of profound engagement. It's more of a specialization. Like a flower is a specialized portion of the plant, whereas a leaf is sort of its bread and butter. It's money maker. It's breadwinner. I don't know. I mean, this is just a metaphor, but it's empirically observable that that's the case. And the number of people that are seriously engaged in what this actually is vanishingly small.
I guess sort of part of the reason I asked the question is, I guess, trying to figure out why I choose sleep.
Sure. Well, this is an interesting question. Why? But sleep is not wrong. It's not a problem. It's just it's one mode of this. This is engagement with itself. This is, let's call it, inherent process. And it's not an inferior mode necessarily. It's just a mode that it is. And it only is an issue when you're exploring alternatives. Then all of a sudden the sleep becomes sort of that which you're contending against or whatever. But it's not that absolutely. It's just that pragmatically, in terms of your particular engagement or aspiration in this situation, right, or in this whatever. So, ignorance is not a worse state than realization. It's just a different aspect, a different phase of this process. And it's obviously a necessary intrinsic phase where it wouldn't exist at all. It's like childhood and adulthood. How come children aren't adults? What's wrong with them? Nothing's wrong with them. It's not time for them to be adults. It's time for them to be children. And likewise, when you're engaged in this in more, let's call them spiritually immature modes, more sort of dominantly ignorant, what we might call ignorant modes from the point of view of spiritual maturity, you might say, why is this deficiency there? It's not a deficiency, it's just a mode. And there's no way to define what it is or why it is, or what its purpose in the scheme of things is, if any. All you can observe is that in the arc of the individual, let's say the archetypal individual, it moves from a dominant mode of ignorance towards eventually a dominant mode of realization. And why that should be so is, who knows? I mean, to answer that question, you need to know what's going on here definitively. And as I've suggested, it may be that this is an event, this is a condition where such a determination is not possible intrinsically. How do you find out definitively why a miracle is the way it is?
No way to say.
But then pragmatically, in the individual case, when we find ourselves at this cusp, at this transitional point of, one foot in old modes and one foot moving into new modes, and it's a sort of gee, what's going on here? How's this going to work out? You're not really in either world, but they're both there and they're contradictory, and what to do? And well, that's the question, what to do. And this is where your own artfulness and your own luck or fortune or what have you kicks in, and things work themselves out in accordance with what's there in those departments. And for everyone, it's completely different. Everyone's in a unique situation, in a unique process. Everyone has unique resources and unique challenges, and sort of the dominant vectors of this relative strengths of all these things combined, and that's what ends up happening.
Certainly, the circumstances that brought me where I am here were largely ineptitude.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, empirically, ignorance is the path to realization. Incompetence is the path to hyperfunctionality. So how's that work? Got me. But empirically, you can just say, well, that's how it is. What is the path that leads directly to realization? Well, ignorance.
Sorry.
No, I mean, just look at it. Empirically, that's what you find. Every realized being that you can ever find came there out of ignorance. So ignorance was the condition that led to the realization. So it's probably better to aspire to ignorance. That's the precursor. Let me increase my ignorance. I want more ignorance. More stupidity. More confusion, yeah. Because that's what leads to it. That's the secret ingredient. Hey, maybe, right? Who knows? And we look at this in sort of vaguely in terms of process. We have sort of a model of, well, realization is a goal, and there's some intrinsic process that's somehow leading to that. Maybe that whole way of looking at it just doesn't even apply. Maybe it's a lot weirder than that, and it's just a total shrug situation.
Completely inexplicable.
Yeah, the whole thing is like, what? Maybe it's not a process. Maybe it's not a development. Maybe it's just more weirdness, right? Who knows?
I want to know if you're taking questions from the peanut gallery.
So very good. And you can be the censor.
You could tell them.
Yeah, if anyone online has a question, if it's a very good one, this is grad school. And we have a brutally strict censor who will be deciding if your question is any good. So you can treat this as a competition. Submit your questions now.
This is grad school, and all of us are stuck in the middle of thesis writing.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about earlier today, intrinsic in this engagement is stepping off the map, stepping out of definability, stepping out of any kind of linear orientation. And so it demands engagement with a nonlinear mode of orientation, a nonlinear mode of functionality, which can look like nothing from the linear point of view. From the logical point of view, it can look like a mess. It can look like, insanity. It can look like just basically dysfunctionality or nothing whatsoever. But it's not. It's its own thing, and it only makes sense in its own terms. So this kind of shifting gears of, like learning to water ski or something. Walking on land is easy, but getting up on water skis is a trick to it. Until you do it, it's like, I can't do that. And the first time you try, you fall down. It's like, this is impossible. No one could do this. And then you sort of get the knack, and all of a sudden there you are, standing on water. At 30 miles an hour. And this is like that. This learning to feel the verification of this strange nonlinearity, the validity of it, the utility of it, even though it is so seemingly chaotic from a linear point of view, so seemingly nebulous from a linear point of view.
What you just said, sitting here, and for a while I've had the feeling of, I guess I'd call it sufficiency, and I feel like subtly that I've left off different modes that were distractions that I would find myself going into without realizing they were distractions, maybe. By virtue of conversations we had earlier and what God knows what, But so it's in just as I said, a state of satisfaction or satisfactoriness that's sort of like just okay. And, and to go on and on about it just to invite more distraction.
Sure.
But I resonate with what you just said. And that's all.
Yeah. This is a richness. This is a fullness. And the way in which that's the case is very strange and nonlinear. And yet it's palpable. And it's very obvious in its own terms. You can't prove it, you can't demonstrate it, and yet it's actual.
I've just noticed that what seems to be going on for me at the moment is if I get sort of confused, if some confusion starts to develop, which is not unusual, then I just like touchstone is, I just sort of go back to the fact that this is just such a stone miracle.
Yeah.
That this light or this creative, this intelligence or whatever, is just, I mean, just that is, I just sort of like a touchstone. I just go back to that, and then I'm okay, because I don't really have to understand all of it.
No way.
Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah.
That seems to be what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, sure. That's great, yeah. Yeah, we don't have to figure this out, we just have to feel it. And then it takes over. It does the rest if there is any rest. Wow.
I know, right? Okay.
We have a winner.
Sort of. There's a quadra here. And it's, let me see if I can piece it
Okay, we have a
together.
contender.
Yeah, we have a contender. Let me put it into, she's got it here in two pieces. How does goodness, compassion, honesty, love, why do those seem to go with realization? They seem to be in some realized people. I don't know, it seems to be present, I guess.
Right. Realize people tend to be nice guys. South women, except in the case of Daughtry John, of course. Daughtry John. And who knows what's up with that? But no, yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
That's it.
It's the best you got? Come on. Give me some more. Okay, all right.
All right. I gotta apologize to you.
I think that one way of understanding that might be that there's in this fullness there is no need to struggle with anything. There's no need to have bitterness. There's no need to be protective. There's no need to be defensive. Just intrinsically because of what this is not precarious, it's not dangerous, it's not threatened, it's not vulnerable. And so in that certainty of invulnerability, that certainty of fullness and eternality, there's no reason for these petty, defensive, essentially psychological-based negativities, which are mostly motivated by fear and beliefs in partiality and so on and so forth. So that's a little better, maybe.
But it's not necessarily so.
Of course not.
Because it can manifest as anything, including, so what they used to call it crazy wisdom or something.
Sure. What did they say about what are these guys, Miller Rapa, who went out and murdered 37 people or something? Whatever. But you can generalize. Realize people tend to be nice guys.
Through all the money lenders.
Yeah, but they deserved it. Come on.
Why not some compassion for the money lenders?
Yeah, they're people too. Money lenders are people too. Come on, give them a chance. Nazis are people too, you know. They're trying. They're doing the best they can.
So I'm feeling a little bit struck dumb and clueless. And
more so than usual?
Well, actually, no, that's a good question. It's actually a little mildly terrifying in a way. Sort of of an abyss quality. But I think even more startling is to kind of look back, and I really, it's kind of been the case all along. That I didn't know what I was doing, and when I thought I did, it's just, I guess it's the second part of that quote.
Well, the mood tonight is a kind of a lostness, a kind of an undefined sort of a nebulosity, and that's appropriate. As I said earlier, intrinsic in this process is you sort of step off the map and you're in darkest whatever. And so the question is certainly viable. Well, where am I? What am I doing here, if anything?
I was talking with Sue earlier today. We had read this really great book on having babies, not how to have babies, but raising them.
The ones on how to have them is much more interesting. Big internet business in there.
Anyway, one of the points they said was not every child is born with their own instruction manual. It's different for every kid. But for me, it's more like not only do I have to figure out my own instruction manual. It's changing every morning, every day, and I mean just morphing, and it's like tacking a sailboat. Yeah. And then it gets to the point where I don't even know how to read the fucking thing.
Sure. Yeah. But again, this is the nature of this process is to discover the nature of this process. The nature of this process is not to follow a recipe, to follow a prescribed list of practices or list of directions. The nature of this process is, well, here's this process, how do you do it? Good luck. Here's your directions. Find out how to do this process, if at all.
Well, if you don't do this process at all, then isn't that just sort of like accepting fate?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily at all. Most people aren't interested in this at all explicitly. In one sense, all of life is this process. This is just kind of engaging with it. What we're doing here is kind of engaging with it on steroids. But life is always kind of precarious and indeterminate, and everyone's making it up as they go along. But most people are quite content to not pay too much attention to that fact and to just sort of, find their own comfort zones and be in that. And that's a quite appropriate way to do it, if that's how you're inclined to do it. But some people have a little more, I don't know what, edginess, riskiness, insanity, pushing the envelope-itude, and they are motivated to be with this a little more, a little more questioningly, a little more strivingly, which is sort of what we're playing with here. But it's not any different than normal life, and there's no right and wrong way to do it. It's really just a matter of one's inclinations. And the vast majority of people are not interested in doing the kind of stuff we're doing here, judging by participation numbers. and that's, why not? That's fine, sure. No reason why one should, unless you're inclined to.
You said it many times, self-correct.
Yes. Yes, exactly so.
Pay attention.
Yeah. It shows you how to do it, and not necessarily clearly, but effectively. It's like water finding its way downhill. It knows how to do it. It knows how to go. It finds down, even if it needs to seem to go up from time to time to do so.
It seems to me, Peter, that I was just thinking outside the box in the abyss, because I tend to have kind of, a response to the abyss, which is like, oh my God, I'm here again, as opposed to, opening, looking at that from another angle, which is what you're saying. It's like, you can't do that until you do it.
Yeah. It's a self-correcting system.
Stepping aside from the apprehension and anxiety about facing the abyss and seeing that maybe there is another possibility there.
Yeah, sure.
I was thinking about deciding last night, that in that particular instance of where the abyss is there, and then I'm contemplating my usual response, which is fear, anxiety,
Right.
apprehension, and then doing the deciding thing of like deciding to trust inherent intelligence, to step into that abyss without knowing what will actually happen, which is what we do anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's something about that conscious choice or possibility that
Sure. Yeah. I guess it can be kind of empowering to sort of feel, well, take a chance. Why not?
Well, the alternative isn't very good, is it?
Yeah, well, maybe not. I mean, who knows? But you've already been there, done that.
Right.
So it's let me try another one, see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
It's like getting to the end of a road in terms of having tried all things that you already know how to do, and then considering the possibility that there is, something else that maybe,
And I mean, it's just another instance of this process is discovering what this process is, and how to do it is discovering how to do it.
Yeah.
And it is a sort of a self-correcting system, and it consists of inelegance until it arrives at elegance. Maybe not. Who knows? I mean, who knows what it consists of?
Right.
It can certainly seem like that, though, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it almost requires a whole new way of looking at everything.
Yeah,
sure. that has none of those terms or expectations or possibilities.
Well, intrinsic in the nature of what this is leaving the map, leaving describability, and that's very interesting, but also kind of risky and kind of strange and kind of precarious, and
which it is anyway.
Exactly, it is anyway. Life is that. So what the hell? Why not? But in the face of all of this question mark, there is certainty. There's one fact. There's one absolutely undeniable, absolutely reliable fact, which is this actuality. This is as it is. This is what it is. It is here, always. And, that's what we circle around. That's what we spiral around and are dancing with and are playing with. And that's our power source. That's our North Star. That's our Qibla.
Yeah. Which is a big difference from being at the abyss without that possibility.
Yeah, it is. It's really big.
Yeah.
But that's what enables this yoga to be anything other than just an absurd game, an absurd pretense, is it's actually based on and oriented towards actuality, with nothing extra put on. It's like, okay, this is actual, and that's it. That's all you get.
Right.
Have at it. Take off from there.
And that's huge.
It is huge.
That is like,
it's really huge.
To trust that, to actually embrace that.
Yeah.
With it is just completely stepping off the edge without having anything else at all to hang on to.
Yeah. But it's also not really an edge. It's really stepping into certainty. Mm-hmm. It's stepping into undeniable, self-verifying, objective actuality. So it's, even though it comes with a whole new open-ended modality of what, nonetheless, there is this amazing orientation that is not just positive. It's not just pie in the sky.
It's not just an idea.
Yeah, it's not just like, well, spin around 3 times
Right.
and click your heels together and everything will be fine. It's not just made up or into fantasy, spun into existence. This really is actual. This really is. It's undeniably here, this presence.
And that's something we can only find for ourselves. I mean, you could sit up there and tell us that till the cows come home.
Oh yeah, me saying it is not is meaningless. It doesn't do you any good.
Right.
But it's an interesting challenge, or it offers an interesting possibility for you to explore this actuality in your own experience, and then discover what the implications of this is, which of course is what we're doing.
I don't know that any of us really know that's what we're doing here.
Well,
in reality.
Well, I'm saying that's what we're doing here. Who knows what's actually happening? Right? Just because I say it doesn't make it so. I mean, God knows I couldn't speak truth if I wanted to. Truth can't be said.
Right, but
So,
even in myself, I mean, I that's why I belong here, and yet, when the rubber meets the road, it's
for sure.
like that's the big.
Yeah, no, that's for real.
The biggest.
Yeah, that's for
question,
real. Yeah,
really.
absolutely.
I was going to say, radiant presence or whatever is totally buoyant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's otherwise we wouldn't even have this discussion.
Right.
It's holding up the whole discussion.
That's
Even
right.
Your idea of the abyss and all that. You could
That's
even
right.
have it if it wasn't
That's
underneath
right.
you.
Yeah. We're not actually crazy enough to be able to sustain this absurdity if there wasn't something to it. No group of people could be that whacked.
Yeah, I said that. I think this group is secret. I said it's crazy town. Anyone come in here is just going to flip out,
Sure, yeah.
No, I don't know. I think this group is pretty
Unless they
wacky.
understood.
What you were saying earlier, it seems like we live in a nightmare, and we're afraid that if we wake up from that, it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
But when you actually do wake up or start to, then you see that certainty or whatever it was that you said.
Yeah, it's a nice way to put it, yeah. We project fear of the unknown because the known is very fear-inspiring. But the known is actually fantasized. It's actually not like that. And the so-called unknown is actually the known. It is actually the antidote to all of this fearfulness. But we have it all asked backwards. Yeah, that's nice. Yes.
Well, it's kind of interesting listening to you talk about actuality and all of this and the buoyance and all this. Because I don't feel any of it at this moment.
Sure.
In fact, the only thing that's keeping me in this seat is reminding myself, it chose you, you didn't choose this. It chose you, you can't remember why, you don't know why, but that's literally the only thing. And that's what's intriguing to me, to have it completely disappear as a contrast to even, I don't know, an hour ago. Well, let's say 5 hours ago.
Right.
And it really does sound like madness.
Sure. But it hasn't actually disappeared, has it? This is here, or how could we be talking? Where would this be happening if this wasn't here?
Well, yes. Maybe I can hold on to that.
Clean for dear life.
Literally.
But whether you hold it or not, it won't go away. Whether you hold onto it or not, here will be here. you will be here. You will be there, maybe, which to you is here. Right. That won't go away even if you try and make it. There's no way you could make it go away. There's no off switch. There's no door you can close between it and you.
Well, my mind, I'm remembering vaguely. And what you're saying is vaguely going into my mind. But the actual immediate experience.
Yeah, it's not about your mind.
Is that I can't even put it into words.
Right.
But and just what you said opened a little crack and then it would shut again.
That's okay. Doesn't matter. You don't need, even if you don't know reality, it hasn't gone anywhere manifestly. It can't go anywhere. It doesn't need, it's not delicate or precarious. It's not like it needs to be preserved or nurtured or, carefully protected from breezes or damage or something like that. On the contrary, it's completely bulletproof. It's nuclear bomb proof. It's stars exploding, going nova proof.
Right. Yeah, my mind's getting that. My mind is.
But whether or not that happens, it is the case. So that's the good news. Maybe.
Yes. That raises a question. It's an old question, but anyone who's looked at spiritual life for a while sees that it goes in a waveform.
Mm-hmm.
We go to ecstatic heights and we come down, and the higher we go, it seems like the lower we go on the depressed form of the sine wave.
Mm-hmm.
Is that waveform? Is that a necessity in spiritual life?
No, it's not a necessity, but it is intrinsic, and I'll explain that. The very nature of this is continual change. And our nature as energy systems is to orient to portions of it, which gives us the peaks. And then as those portions change, we interpret that as a valley, because what we interpret as a peak seems to have slipped out from under us. But of course, it itself, what it is, hasn't changed at all. It's just the way it presents. It is continually morphing, call it. So it's still our misinterpretation that gives it that oscillating quality. And in realization, that stops. The morphing doesn't stop, but the ups and downs stops. The preferences don't even stop. There's still, oh yeah, this is great, and oh boy, this sucks. But there's no actual up and down there. That's just sort of like an empty echo of preference. In other words, you may prefer one mode and prefer not another mode, but you don't give a shit. So there's no actual, it's the subtle investment that makes it an actual up and down. Mm-hmm. Oh no, it's going. And oh, here it comes again.
I was thinking that the other day. I thought, I can't work up a good tantrum.
I know, right?
I don't like this, but
I know.
God, I just can't get pissed off.
Realization is just so boring. Ho hum.
Well, we were saying that today, driving through the park. Like big rocks, great.
Yeah, right. Another big rock. Another spectacular vista. All right, okay. Another one.
Yeah, but there was a kind of a sense of childlike joy that was like, yeah, it would be fun if I could, muster up a.
Well, it's nostalgia. There's nostalgia for the joy of the soap opera.
No, it's not just that. It's like, well, I can't say, I can't describe it. I guess it was just like happy, joy.
Happy, joy. Ho hum. Another day of transcendental bliss. Damn.
You're in the doghouse. Not really.
As Jeb McHannon says in one of his books, it's kind of a hard thing to complain about now that I think of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to go back to the topic of cycling.
Yes.
Because I think that is a really important topic. And we're kind of cycle watchers, and we see patterns that are just predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, going on years, we can watch it. And it's so comforting to know, like, oh, I'm just at the bottom of this cycle, and I'll be coming back up in a few days.
Sure.
And I see so many people suffering because they don't recognize cycles, and they think when they're on the bottom, oh, their whole identity is framed by this, and they don't remember that they're going to come out of it.
Right. They think that, oh, this is how it's always going to be.
And I think a lot of spiritual identity crises are because people don't understand cycles.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's an extremely important topic.
Yeah, I agree completely.
There's a lot of comfort in understanding that.
Yeah. We're not stuck in the low points, and we aren't actually getting anywhere as a result of the high points. It's just an artifact of the way the energy works that it is continually moving, and so it presents itself as various ways that we take as challenging or as rewarding, depending on our personal, nature and tastes and what have you. I mean, this is continually moving, continually morphing. It's like tides. It's like astrology. The planets are just always moving, and they're making harmonies and dissonances continuously. They're coming in and going out, non-stop, always reinforcing themselves. And of course, our experience is that. It is this constantly changing energy configurations. And we experience this as the literal, configurations of our sense experiences. We can experience it as the flowing of our moods, the flowing of our inspiration. I mean, all flowing of our creativity. All these things are continually ebbing and flowing, and with enormous complexity. And this is just a given. It's constant. This is the nature of the beast. And of course, with greater maturity, we learn to relate to the system rather than the highs and the lows. We don't grasp the highs and fear the lows. We get that it comes and goes. It's this flow. The tide may be going out now, but it's going to come in, and then it's going to go out, and then it's going to come in, and then it's going to go out. So it's and this is an illustration of the comfort, the value of moving into a more mature, comprehensive understanding, a more of a global view rather than, fixating on, sort of tunnel vision of what this is, see the big picture, see the whole, and then you get the way it all fits together and works, and you get, that it's not as precarious as it may seem if you take the little piecemeal view. Yeah, for sure. And there's no limit to that logic, The more comprehensive your view, the more that's the case. So, yeah, for sure.
Even the big guys, the creative people like Beethoven, Van Gogh, the higher they go, the deeper they fall.
Sure, yeah.
Before they come up again.
Sure. Well, it's the nature of the energy, and the more eccentric the energy, then the more that's the case. So, yeah, for sure.
Speak on the subject of the end of fear.
The end of fear.
Yeah.
The end of fear is a discovery of the nature of fantasy. Until that nature of fantasy is seen, fear persists, or returns, let's say, maybe. Because fear is always of projection. Fear is of anticipation, and anticipation always exists in imagination, in fantasy. And and the actuality always deviates from the expectation. It's typical, for example, for people to be afraid of dying. But they're not afraid of dying, they're afraid of their idea of dying. They don't know what death is like. How can anyone know what death is like until you're in it? That will be an actuality, and it will, absolutely certain, be different than you think. So what you're afraid of is not death, you're afraid of a fantasy of death which is different than the actuality. So you're just afraid of the total pie in the sky in that instance. I mean, one is who one would be, who is, and so on. And all fears are exactly like that. Fears are of ideas, fantasies, projections of what things will be like, and those projections are always deviating from the actuality. Always, always, always. It's impossible to know exactly what something's going to be. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock we're going to be back in this room, and you can picture in your mind what that's going to look like. The actuality will be different than you expect in every particular. That's just the way experience works. So there's no reason to have hope or fear about what that's going to be like, because you don't know. And the hope and fear wouldn't be to that, it's going to be to your fantasy of that, which is not that. So you're just being a crazy person. It's like being afraid of the boogeyman in the closet, even though there's no boogeyman in the closet. It's like, okay, yeah, what's the point here? And it's possible to see how imagination works and how fantasy works, and that it is just imagination, it's just fantasy. What imagination posits is not actual. Imagination is actual. Imagination is an actual experiential event, but what is imagined, supposed to be an actuality, is not. It's absolutely nothing. And so since it's nothing, there's no reason to have a reaction to it, plus or minus, because there's nothing there. It's just like the boogeyman in the closet. Why be scared of it since it's not there? So it's a matter of seeing the actual case, seeing that that is the case, seeing that what you imagine is not actual and never will be actual, and never has been actual. It can't be. Experience doesn't work like that. Experience is always surprising. So the actuality will always differ from your anticipation. Always, always. There's no way that it cannot. So having a reaction to a projection like that is just basic, solid, stone insanity.
Yes, it's not so much the end of fantasy, it's the end of believing fantasies.
Oh yeah, fantasy never stops. It's a natural nature of mind to spin off these fantasies, but to assume that they're actual, that they bear any relation to actuality, and therefore you should react to them as if they were. It's fascinating to fantasize about. Fantasizing about death is exquisite. It's very entertaining. But to assume that your fantasies are actual and then react to them, oh no, it's going to be terrible. My whole world's going to see some. No, my body's going to die. I'm going to be in extreme pain. It's like, well, maybe not. But what actually happens is sure as shit going to be different than you think, no matter what you picture it to be.
I just start selling my home and visitors right away.
Yeah, sure. And again, it's possible to see this very directly, very clearly. It's possible to see that imagination and fantasy, what they posit, are not actual, cannot be actual. And so therefore, it's absurd to react to them as if they were, or to orient towards them as if they were. They're hypotheses. They're what-ifs. They exist only hypothetically. They exist only as possibilities. The actuality will deviate from the possibility every single time, not even most of the time.
Yeah, because it can't. Even if it was close, it couldn't be exact.
Exactly. And almost the same is a synonym for, is a very sophisticated way of saying entirely different. It's impossible to be afraid of actuality because by the time it happens, it's already gone. It's already upon you. You can't anticipate it. So it's all just, wow, what's this? What's happening? And it's possible to answer that question too, because by the time you ask it, it's already moved on. It's already morphed. So really being with the flow of actuality as it is just being in a constant state of startlement. It's like, wow, I did not know this exact moment was going to look like this. I just didn't know. It was like, wow, what a surprise. And now, I did not know this exact moment was going to look like this. I had no idea what it was going to look like. Wow, absolute novelty. And that's continually the case. So hope and fear and all these things, there's just no room for them. There's no basis for them. Just sort of startlement and wonderment and entertainedness. Our third day is well begun. And I wish you all a good night. I hope you sleep well, or at least sleep interestingly.
2.5 more minutes.
Stickler. I told you she's a stickler. She's a real hard ass over there.
You're lazy, so I have to keep you on task.
Yeah, we ended 9 minutes early last.